I found my guide dog, Buddy, lying still in my backyard this morning, his fur matted and his body broken. Those teenagers from down the street did this for fun. I know it. Their laughter still echoes from last night. By sundown, I need to decide what to do before they erase all evidence. I called my son, but he said I was overreacting again. So I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line, my hands shaking. I will not let them silence me. I just want someone official to see what happened. The house feels empty and silent, without Buddy's paws clicking on the floor. He was my eyes after the accident took my sight years ago. Now I'm alone, and the fear is a cold stone in my chest. Things got tense when Mrs. Gable, the ringleader's mother, showed up at my door. She slid an envelope across my kitchen table. "For your troubles," she said, her voice slick as oil. "Let's not drag the children through mud, Evelyn. You're confused, we all know it." I pushed the envelope back, my fingers tracing its smooth surface. Then my grandson, Liam, texted me, breaking the monotony of this awful day. "Grandma, I heard what happened. I'm coming over after school." He's only 16, but he's always been kind. When he arrived, he didn't mention the money. Instead, he asked if I had security camera footage from my porch. I'd forgotten about the old system my daughter installed last Christmas. We checked it together, and the video was corrupted, just static during the time Buddy was hurt. But Liam noticed something, a timestamp glitch that didn't match the rest. Someone had tampered with it, and it wasn't the kids. Then Liam whispered, "Grandma, I think my friend's dad is involved. He works in tech support for the neighborhood watch." The police officer sat in my living room, jotting notes with a bored expression. Mrs. Gable had already called ahead, labeling me as unstable. I had until tomorrow to provide solid proof or the case closes. I described Buddy's injuries and the teens I recognized, but the officer kept sighing. So I decided to visit the local vet clinic myself, hoping the autopsy report might hold a clue. My neighbor, Carol, drove me. She's one of the few who still talks to me. I needed to get that report to prove the violence wasn't an accident. I could see the pity in Carol's eyes. She thinks I'm falling apart, just like my son says. Things got worse when Dr. Evans at the clinic hesitated, mentioning the Gables are major donors. He finally handed me the papers, but the cause of death was listed as unknown trauma, with a note suggesting possible animal attack. That's a lie. Buddy was gentle. Then, as I left, I overheard a receptionist on the phone. "Yes, the file's been updated per your request." She was talking to someone named Robert Gable. It was a shock. I never knew the parents were interfering this deeply. Back home, I spread the report on my kitchen table. Then I noticed a handwritten scribble in the margin. "Check for microchips." Buddy had an ID chip, but when I called the company, they said it was deactivated yesterday. Only someone with access to my records could do that. Just then, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll lose more than a dog." I stood in line at the bank, determined to secure my accounts before someone else tampered with them. The deadline is today. If the Gables can deactivate a microchip, what's next? I asked the teller to change my passwords and add extra security. My hands trembled as I signed the forms, remembering how Buddy used to nudge me when I was anxious. This constant vigilance is stealing the peace I earned in retirement. I need to protect what's left of my independence. Things got tense when my daughter Sarah called mid-transaction. "Mum, the Gables are saying you're harassing them. Please, let it go for the family's sake." Her words felt like a betrayal. I ended the call and finished at the bank, but as I left, I saw Mr. Gable across the street, watching me from his luxury car. Suddenly, an elderly man bumped into me, dropping his cane. I helped him up, and he muttered, "They're watching you, dear. My grandson works for their law firm." I hurried home, my mind racing. When I checked my mail, I found a formal letter from a senior care agency scheduling a wellness check for tomorrow. I didn't request it. The return address matched the Gables attorney's office. The social worker arrived at 10 a.m., her smile too bright for my dim living room. I have until her report is filed to prove I'm competent, or they might recommend assisted living. I offered tea, playing the gracious host, while inside I seethed. I have to pass this inspection to show I'm not the confused old woman they're painting me to be. It's humiliating to be judged in my own home. Things got more intense when she asked about my fixation on the dog incident, citing calls from concerned family. I kept my answers calm, pointing to my tidy house and managed medications. Then, my granddaughter, Emily, stopped by unexpectedly with her toddler. She didn't know about the visit, but her chatter about school and toys lightened the mood, making me seem more grounded. The social worker softened, taking notes more slowly. After she left, Emily hugged me and said, "Grandma, Liam told me everything. I believe you." She handed me a flash drive. Liam had recovered partial footage from the cloud, showing shadows near my fence that night. The video cuts off just as a familiar car pulls up, one I've seen in the Gables' driveway. I sat with Liam at my kitchen table, the flash drive inserted into my old laptop. We have to decipher this video before the Gables find out we have it. The deadline is tonight. Liam said his friend is getting nervous. As the grainy images played, I recognized the car. It was Mr. Gables' sedan, parked down the street around the time Buddy was hurt. I plan to take this to the police again, with new evidence. I'm risking Liam's friendship with that family, and I'm afraid of what they might do to him. Things got worse when Sarah called, furious. "Mum, involve my kids again, and I'll petition for guardianship." I hung up, my heart pounding. Then, the doorbell rang. It was Carol, my neighbour, holding a bakery box. "I saw the social worker leave," she said. "Thought you could use a treat." Over coffee, she confessed she'd seen the teens that night, but was scared to speak up because her husband works for the Gables. We reviewed the video together, and Carol pointed out something we missed. A reflection in a window showed a figure with a baseball bat. It wasn't a teenager. It was an adult, tall and broad-shouldered, like Mr. Gable. Just then, my phone lit up with a notification, a bank alert about unusual activity on my savings account. The bank alert showed a $5,000 withdrawal from my savings account I didn't authorize. I have to get to the bank before it closes today to reverse this and secure everything. My heart hammered as I called Liam, asking him to drive me immediately. I grabbed the flash drive with the video evidence, stuffing it into my purse. I'd deal with the Gables after saving my finances. The silence in my house screamed without Buddy's comforting presence. I need to stop whoever is accessing my money and prove it's connected to the Gables. My sense of safety is dwindling. Every ring of the phone makes me jump now. Things intensified when I arrived at the bank, and the manager, Mr. Higgins, greeted me with a frown. "Mrs. Evelyn, we have a note here from your daughter Sarah requesting a financial review due to concerns about your mental state." He showed me a signed form, and my blood ran cold. She'd listed memory lapses and impulsivity. I insisted on seeing the transaction details, my hands trembling. Then, an elderly teller I've known for years, Martha, waved me over during a lull. "Evelyn, I shouldn't say this, but that withdrawal was initiated online from an IP address linked to the Gables law firm." Her whisper was barely audible, but it hit me like a physical blow. I thanked her, and rushed to finish the paperwork to freeze my accounts. As Liam and I left the bank, my phone buzzed with a call from Sarah. "Mum, I had to do it. The Gables threatened to sue for defamation if we didn't back off." I ended the call, feeling betrayed. Then, Liam checked his phone and paled. "Grandma, my friend just texted. Mr. Gable knows about the video. He's on his way to your house right now." I stood in my driveway, watching Mr. Gable's car pull up just as Liam and I returned. I have until he speaks to decide how to use the video evidence without endangering my family. I wanted to confront him calmly and record everything, but my knees felt weak. I whispered to Liam to stay in the car and call Carol as a witness. The evening air was cool, but I was sweating under my sweater. I needed to show him I wasn't afraid and had proof. Alienating Sarah further is a risk, and I hate putting Liam in this position. Things escalated when Mr. Gable stepped out, his suit crisp and expression smug. "Evelyn, let's not make this messy. My wife told you to drop it." He gestured to my house. "I'm here to discuss a settlement. We'll cover your dog's expenses if you sign an NDA." I refused, pulling out my phone to record. Then, Carol arrived unexpectedly, marching over from her yard. "I saw everything that night, Robert. I'll testify if I have to." Her voice shook, but she stood firm. Mr. Gable laughed, but his eyes narrowed. "You're both confused, old women. My lawyers will have a field day." I played the video snippet on my phone, pointing to the figure with the bat. Mr. Gable's smirk faded, and he snatched the phone, deleting the file before handing it back. No evidence, no case. But as he drove off, Liam rushed over from the car. "Grandma, I uploaded a backup to the cloud right after we got home. He doesn't know we still have it." I sat at my kitchen table with Liam and Carol, reviewing the cloud backup of the video. "We have to get this to the police chief by morning, before the Gables pressure more witnesses." I called the non-emergency line again, insisting on an appointment. I aim to file an official complaint with the new evidence, but I'm exhausted from the constant battles. The empty spot where Buddy's bed used to be aches like a fresh wound. I need justice for Buddy and to clear my name from these mental decline claims. The strain on my health is real. I forgot to take my blood pressure pill today. Things got more stressful when Sarah showed up unannounced, her face drawn. "Mum, please stop this. The Gables are threatening to pull Liam's scholarship if we don't back down." She looked at Liam, who glared back. I showed her the video, explaining how the Gables are involved, but she just shook her head. "It's your word against theirs." Then, my phone rang. It was Dr. Evans from the vet clinic. "Evelyn, I've been feeling guilty. The Gables pressured me to alter the report. Meet me tomorrow, and I'll give you the original documents." I agreed, relief washing over me. After Sarah left, Liam hugged me. "I'm not giving up, Grandma." We prepared copies of the video for the police. Just as we finished, a notification popped up on my laptop. Someone had tried to access my cloud account from an unknown device. I woke early to meet Dr. Evans at the clinic before it opened. I have to get those original vet reports today to strengthen my case with the police. Liam drove me, and we parked across the street, watching the quiet building. I plan to secure the documents and then head to the police station, but I'm worried about walking into a trap. The morning chill seeped into my bones, and I missed Buddy's warmth beside me. I need this proof to show Buddy's death was intentional, not an accident. There's a risk of the Gables intercepting us. I saw a car that looked like Mr. Gable's circling the block. Things got tense when Dr. Evans didn't show up at the agreed time. After 10 minutes, I called his number, but it went to voicemail. Liam suggested we leave, but I insisted on waiting. Then, a young assistant vet hurried out, spotting us. Dr. Evans sent me. He's been held up. He asked me to give you this. She handed me a sealed envelope, her hands shaking. He said to be careful. The Gables have friends in the police department. I thanked her, and we rushed back to the car. Inside the envelope were the original reports, clearly stating blunt force trauma consistent with a weapon. As we drove toward the police station, Liam's phone beeped with a news alert. Local businessman Robert Gable announces run for city council. The timing felt too convenient. When we arrived at the station, the officer at the desk recognized me and sighed. Mrs. Evelyn, we've been instructed to direct you to our community liaison. It's Mrs. Gable's niece. I stood in the police station lobby, clutching the vet reports and feeling the weight of the system against me. I have to find another way to submit this evidence before the Gables' influence silences me completely. I had intended to speak to a higher-up, but the liaison's smug smile told me I'd hit a wall. I decided to visit my lawyer instead, an old friend named George, who handles wills and estates. Liam waited outside, looking worried. I need legal advice to protect myself and expose the truth. It will cost me money in fees and take an emotional toll as I fight my own family. Things escalated when Sarah called again, her voice breaking. Mum, Liam's scholarship is revoked. The Gables made good on their threat. I felt a surge of guilt, but Liam texted me. I don't care about the money. We're doing the right thing. George greeted me in his cozy office, surrounded by books. I showed him the evidence, and he agreed to help file a civil suit for damages and harassment. But Evelyn, it'll be slow, and the Gables will counterattack. As we discussed strategies, my phone buzzed with an email from an unknown sender. It was security footage from a neighbor's camera down the street, time-stamped the night Buddy died. It showed Mr. Gable arguing with the teens before handing one of them a bat. I forwarded it to George, my hands steady for the first time in days. Then, as I left his office, I saw Mrs. Gable waiting in her car across the street, watching me. She rolled down her window and called out, "It's not too late to settle, Evelyn. Think of your grandchildren." I kept walking, but when I reached Liam, I noticed a folded note tucked under my windshield wiper. It was a copy of my will with sections highlighted in yellow. That note on my windshield, all about my will, sent a real chill right through me. I knew I had to go back to see George, my lawyer, right away. I had to fix my will before the Gables next door tried to have me declared unfit. I hurried into his office, that awful note in my hand, and told him everything. George looked it over, and his face got tight. "Evelyn," he said, "this is pure intimidation. We need to update your will today, and we should file a restraining order." I just nodded, my hands shaking a little as I signed the new papers. This new will makes sure my estate goes straight to my son, Liam, and into a trust for my grandchildren. It has to bypass my daughter, Sarah, if the Gables get their claws into her. Going home to my empty house without my little dog, Buddy, feels heavier every single day. It's just too quiet. I have to keep all my legal papers safe and protect my family from the Gables' scheming. The emotional strain is really getting to me, I tell you. I barely slept a wink last night, and I can feel my blood pressure creeping up. Then things got worse. Sarah called me, just sobbing. "Mum, why are you cutting me out of your will?" she cried. "The Gables showed me some paper they said was your new will." I had to end the call. I felt a terrible pang of guilt, but I can't risk them manipulating my own daughter. Then George got an email from a police liaison, who just happens to be Mrs. Gable's niece. She was requesting a voluntary mental health check for me, saying the family was concerned. I refused, of course. I told them it was harassment, but the pressure just doesn't let up. As I was leaving George's office, an older gentleman approached me in the parking lot. It was Henry, Mr. Gable's old business partner. "I heard about your dog," he said, his voice low. "Robert has a history of this sort of thing. He covered up for his son's vandalism last year. I have some records." Then he pressed a little flash drive into my hand and hurried off. Once I was back in the car, Liam came over and we looked at what was on it. There were files showing payoffs to silence people, plain as day. We drove back to my house, determined to add this new evidence to our pile. But as I was unlocking my front door, I noticed my porch light was broken. Then I saw a plain envelope wedged into the doorframe. My heart just sank. I opened it right there and pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of my grandson walking home from the school bus stop. Someone had scrawled a message on it. "Stop now, or he's next." I felt so tired and angry all at once. They weren't just coming for me anymore. I sat at my kitchen table, holding an old photo of my grandson, Liam. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At my age, you think you've seen everything. But this trouble with the Gables has my heart racing. I'm a grandmother in my 70s, for goodness sake. I should be enjoying my retirement, not dealing with this nonsense. I decided then and there I had to install security cameras around my house. I also knew I had to go to the police properly, even though the Gables seemed to know everyone in town. I felt scared, plain and simple. This old house of mine, with its familiar creaks and groans, suddenly felt full of warnings. I called my son-in-law George, who's always good in a crisis. He told me to file a report with the county sheriff's office, not our local station, to avoid any funny business. Later that day, Liam came over to help me. He's a good boy, my grandson, but he looked so pale and worried. Together, we set up those cameras at the front door, the back porch, and near the garage. I want to protect him and have solid proof if the Gables try anything else. But I'll admit, part of me was terrified that this would just make everything worse. What really hurts is how this has pushed my daughter Sarah away. She hasn't returned my calls since that big argument over her father's will. I miss her and the grandkids. Things got even stranger when Mrs. Gable showed up on my doorstep, holding a bakery box like it was some kind of peace offering. "Evelyn, let's be reasonable," she said. "My husband can make that scholarship money reappear for your family, and we'll make sure you're compensated fairly." I shook my head and pointed right at the new camera above the door. I told her no deal. She left in a huff, but not before saying, "You're cutting yourself off from everyone who cares about you." Her words stung. I won't lie. A little while later, my neighbour Carol stopped by with a pot of chicken soup. We sat at the dining table and went through some of my late husband Henry's old files. That's when we found it. Printed emails between Mr. Gable and a local judge, talking about handling my case to sway things their way. My heart sank. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an alert from my cloud storage saying someone had accessed the backup videos again. Liam was still there, and he quickly helped me change all my passwords. We both realized the Gables must have hired someone who knows about computers. As evening settled in, the doorbell rang. A delivery man handed me a package I hadn't ordered. Inside was a stuffed toy dog, just like the one my old dog Buddy used to have when he was a pup. But this one had its head torn clean off. A small note was tucked inside, and it read, "Some things are better forgotten." I felt a cold dread wash over me. I placed the box on the counter and locked the door, my hands trembling all over again. When I saw that toy all broken and torn, it hit me right in the heart. It was a reminder of how low the Gables would stoop to scare our family. I knew I had to take all my evidence, the papers and those little flash drives, to the county sheriff before noon. If I waited, They might pressure Henry into silence or shred more records. My son Liam offered to drive me in his sensible sedan. I held my bag close on my lap, feeling the weight of every document. At the sheriff's office, I did my best to speak clearly, but my voice trembled as I described the threats. The deputy, a patient man, listened and promised to look into it. Still, he warned that the Gables have friends in town government, so it could drag on. Walking out, I felt a flicker of hope, but I was so tired. At my age, with grandchildren to think about, this stress is draining. I want justice so I can feel secure in my own house again. Lately, I startle at every creak or car door, and it's not right. My garden is all weedy now. My late husband Buddy loved puttering out there, and neglecting it makes me sad. Later that day, my daughter Sarah came over unannounced. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She hugged me tight and said, "Mum, I'm sorry." The Gables admitted they lied. They never actually cancelled Liam's scholarship. They just threatened to. I was scared I'd lose my job if I spoke up. We made up right there in the hallway, and I felt a deep relief. Family should stick together, especially when times are hard. We moved to the kitchen and had a cup of tea while we talked it all over. Sarah suggested calling a local news reporter who looks into shady dealings around town. I agreed it was worth a try, so she dialed the number right then. Not long after, my phone rang. It was Henry, and he sounded rushed and worried. "Evelyn, Robert found out I helped you. He's frozen my bank accounts. I have to get out of town, but I emailed you a recording. It's him admitting they covered everything up." I went to my computer, my hands a little shaky, and opened the email. Sure enough, there was the file. When I played it, I heard Mr. Gable's voice plain as day, bragging about how he was dealing with that old woman. I felt a hot surge of anger. No one should be treated this way. Just as I saved the recording, my security camera app beeped on my phone. I tapped the screen and saw a car sitting idle outside my house, its headlights off. I zoomed in and recognized Mr. Gable's sedan. My heart started pounding, and I knew this trouble was far from over. I was in my kitchen, washing up after dinner, when I noticed Mr. Gable's car parked across the street. It sat there for a whole hour, just watching my house, and it made me feel scared. I knew I had to get this recording to the sheriff and that reporter before he could cause more trouble. So I called my son-in-law George. He's a good man, always level-headed, and he set up a meeting with the county sheriff for first thing tomorrow morning. My daughter Sarah came over to stay with me that night. She brought some cookies she'd baked, and we sat at the kitchen table making copies of all the evidence: bank statements, old letters, and the audio recordings. Meanwhile, my son Liam was in the living room, keeping an eye on the security cameras we'd installed. I'm determined to see this through, but all this watching and waiting is wearing me down. I miss the simple days when I could take my dog Buddy for a walk in the park and watch my grandchildren play on the swings. Those times felt so peaceful and safe. I need to expose what the Gables have done and restore my family's sense of security. Reconnecting with Sarah has been a real comfort. We hadn't been as close lately, and it's good to have her help. But I can't shake this fear for Liam's safety. Then the phone rang. It was my neighbour Carol, and her voice was shaking. She said, "Evelyn, the Gables are suing me for slander because I told you what I saw them do. I can't afford a lawyer." I felt so angry that they were dragging her into this. I promised Carol that George would help her, so now we have another battle to fight. We worked late into the night, sorting through papers and files in my cosy kitchen. The clock on the wall showed it was nearly midnight when an email arrived from the reporter. She agreed to meet us tomorrow, saying the story had caught her interest. But just as I finished reading it, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a process server handing me a lawsuit. The papers said the Gables are suing me for defamation and emotional distress, demanding I take back all my accusations. I shut the door, my hands trembling, and showed the documents to Sarah. She gasped, and then her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Drop the case, or we'll reveal private family secrets about your mother's past. I felt a cold dread wash over me. How could they use our family's history against us? Sarah and I looked at each other, and I knew we had to stay strong for the sake of our family. That lawsuit and the threat about my old troubles left me shaken to my core. By morning, I had to choose. Do I fight this and risk everyone knowing our business? Or do I back down to keep things quiet for my family? I asked my daughter Sarah and my son Liam to come over. We sat in my living room, surrounded by photos of my grandchildren on the mantel, and I told them the whole story. Decades ago, when I was a young mother, I hit a rough patch with money. It was just a short struggle, but the Gables are twisting it into something ugly to shame me. We talked it over, and we all agreed. We won't be bullied. My husband George is filing a countersuit for harassment, and we're meeting with a reporter later today to tell our side. I felt a strange calm settle over me once we made the decision together, but deep down, I was scared of the embarrassment this could bring. I need to clear my name and make the Gables answer for what they're doing, no matter what it costs me personally. The stress has been awful. I've dropped a few pounds, and just last week, my doctor at the clinic warned me to take it easy. Things got worse when Mrs. Gable called, her voice cold as ice. "Evelyn," she said, "this is your final warning. Sign that retraction, or we'll destroy your reputation." I hung up right then and blocked her number. I wasn't going to listen to another word. Later, Liam found out something big. The Gables' tech expert had been let go, and through a friend of a friend, he reached out, willing to speak up about evidence he deleted for them. We met him at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with soft lighting where I could sip my tea and gather my thoughts. He confessed that Mr. Gable ordered him to tamper with my home's security footage. He handed over signed papers and logs to prove it. As we walked out, my phone rang. It was the reporter. She said her article will come out tomorrow, using our evidence to show how corrupt the Gables really are. I felt a flicker of hope, but my hands were still trembling. Back at home, I checked the mail by the front door. There was an official letter from the court. The defamation case is scheduled for next week. My heart sank a little, but then I spotted a handwritten note tucked underneath. It was from Henry, sent before he moved away. It read, "Check Robert's safe. He keeps a ledger of all the money he's paid out. The combination is his son's birthday." I clutched that note tight, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Maybe this was the break we needed to protect what's ours. Henry's note about the ledger felt like a final, dangerous chance. I had to decide by morning whether to use that safe combination or burn the note and let the lawsuit run its course. I called my family together, Sarah, Liam, and my son-in-law George. We sat around my kitchen table, the note lying between us like a lit fuse. I told them I wouldn't involve them in anything illegal, but if that ledger existed, it could end this. George, ever the lawyer, warned it was risky. Any evidence obtained improperly might not be admissible. But Liam, my brave grandson, said he could look up public records for the safe's model to see if it had a digital audit trail. The weight of asking my family to take this risk made my arthritis flare up, a deep, throbbing pain in my hands. I was determined to find a legal way to expose the ledger without breaking into anything. I was constantly afraid that the Gables would discover Henry's betrayal and hurt him, wherever he was. The pressure intensified when my neighbour Carol called, her voice a terrified whisper. "Evelyn, A private investigator just left my house. He was asking about you, about any eccentric behavior. The Gables are building a case for your incompetence." I thanked her and hung up, my heart pounding. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated. Then, Liam found something on his laptop. The model of safe Mr. Gable likely owned, based on a photo from a charity event at their home, automatically logged every time it was opened and from which device. If we could get a subpoena based on other evidence, we could legally access those logs and prove the ledger's existence. It was a long shot, but it was clean. We decided George would present this theory to the judge in our countersuit. As we finalized our plan, my doorbell rang. It was a delivery for Sarah. A lavish bouquet of flowers. The card read, "A gesture of goodwill from the Gable family." Sarah's face went pale. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mum, this is the same florist they used when they sent flowers to Dad's secretary before they fired her. It's a threat." I took the flowers and placed them in the sink. We were all silent, the sweet scent filling the room, a stark contrast to the fear we felt. Then George's phone buzzed. It was a text from a colleague at the courthouse. The judge assigned to our defamation case had just recused himself due to a personal connection to the Gables. A new, unknown judge was taking over the case tomorrow. The news of a new judge felt like starting from scratch. I had to meet with George first thing to understand who we were dealing with and if they were also in the Gables' pocket. I arrived at his office early, the morning sun straining through the blinds. George had already pulled the file for Judge Wilkins, a recent appointee. "Her record is clean, Evelyn, but that doesn't mean anything," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. I sipped my tea, trying to steady my nerves. The familiar ache of loneliness for Buddy was a constant companion now, a hollow feeling in my chest every time I came home to an empty house. I needed to project strength and sanity in every interaction now, to undermine the Gables' narrative of me being a confused old woman. The emotional toll was immense. I found myself rehearsing simple conversations in my head, terrified of misspeaking. The pressure mounted when Sarah called, her voice tight with anxiety. "Mum, I just got a call from Liam's school. Someone anonymously reported concerns about our home environment, and a welfare check is scheduled for today." I felt a hot flash of anger. They were using my grandchildren as weapons. I told Sarah to come straight to George's office with Liam. We would face the social worker together, as a united family. While we waited, George filed a motion for the safe logs, arguing that the Gables' pattern of harassment and the new welfare check showed a concerted effort to discredit me, making the evidence crucial. It was a gamble. The social worker, a young woman named Anna, arrived and conducted her interview right in George's conference room. She asked pointed questions about my memory, my finances, and the stress of the lawsuit. I answered calmly, with Sarah and Liam supporting every statement. After nearly an hour, Anna closed her notebook. "Everything seems in order here, Mrs. Evelyn. I'll note the family's cohesion in my report." It was a small victory, but a vital one. As she left, George's assistant rushed in. The motion for the safe logs was denied. Judge Wilkins said it was a fishing expedition without sufficient cause. Our legal path to the ledger was blocked. Just then, my phone vibrated with a notification from my home security system. The camera facing the backyard showed a figure, quickly disappearing into the trees. The timestamp was from 10 minutes ago, while we were all in this meeting. Seeing that figure in my backyard sent a cold jolt through me. We drove straight home from George's office, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to secure my house and see what, if anything, they had taken or left behind. Liam called the local police to report the trespass, while Sarah and I walked through every room, checking windows and doors. Nothing was out of place, but the violation felt visceral. The house I'd shared with my late husband for 40 years no longer felt like a sanctuary. I sank into my favourite armchair, the floral fabric worn thin from years of use, and felt a profound weariness. I immediately wanted to install more security, motion sensor lights, and perhaps even a guard dog, though the thought of replacing Buddy was too painful. It eroded my peace, with constant vigilance leaving me exhausted. The Gables' intimidation felt like a physical presence lurking at the edges of my property. Later that afternoon, a patrol car arrived. The officer took my statement, but his demeanour was dismissive. "Probably just kids, Ma'am, or a deer setting off the motion sensor." I showed him the enhanced screenshot Liam had prepared, the blurry image of a person in dark clothing. He just shrugged. Frustrated, I decided to take a different tack. I remembered Henry mentioning that Mr. Gable was paranoid about his business reputation. If I couldn't get the ledger, maybe I could shake the tree. I asked George to draft a formal letter to the editor of the local paper, outlining the baseless lawsuit and the harassment, without making any libelous claims. It was a public challenge. As George emailed the letter, Carol came over, carrying a small, nervous terrier on a leash. "His name is Scamp," she said. "My sister can't keep him." I thought, maybe you could use a little noise in the house again. The dog looked at me with timid eyes. I was touched by her gesture. Scamp wasn't Buddy, but his presence was a comfort. That evening, as I was feeding him, my phone rang. It was the reporter, her voice excited. "Evelyn, I've been digging. I found a former employee of Gable's development company who is willing to talk about financial discrepancies. He mentioned a ledger, too. He's scared, but he's meeting me tomorrow." Hope, fragile and fierce, bloomed in my chest. I thanked her and hung up. Just then, Scamp started barking furiously at the front window. I looked out to see a dark sedan, the same one from before, parked just beyond the reach of my new motion sensor light. It idled for a moment, then slowly pulled away. The reporter's call was the first real break we'd had. The former employee, a man named Ben, was meeting her at a neutral location today, and she wanted me to be available by phone in case he had questions only I could answer. I spent the morning at my kitchen table, notes spread out before me, Scamp snoozing at my feet. The little dog's soft snoring was a comforting sound. I was ready to corroborate any detail, to give this Ben the courage to speak. I wanted this story to run, to shine a light so bright the Gables couldn't hide anymore. But I was also afraid for this stranger, risking his livelihood. I aimed to help the reporter secure a credible front-page story that would force an official investigation. I feared the Gables might retaliate against Ben and launch a more aggressive legal attack on me. I felt immense pressure. My hands were clammy, and I'd barely touched my breakfast. Around noon, the reporter called. "He's here, Evelyn. I'm putting you on speaker." Ben's voice was hesitant at first. He confirmed the existence of a private ledger, detailing payoffs to local officials and payments to silence people like me. He said Mr. Gable kept it in his home office safe. My heart leapt. This was the confirmation we needed. Then, Ben dropped another bombshell. "There's a second set of books," he said. "Digital ones. He keeps them on a separate, encrypted server. His son, the one who was involved with your dog, he brags about being the only one who knows the password." I felt a cold clarity. The teenager held the key. The reporter thanked Ben, and he hurried away. She promised to have the article ready for her editor's review by end of day. I sat back, my mind racing. The digital records would be even more damning than a physical ledger. An hour later, George called. His tone was grim. Evelyn, the Gables lawyer, just filed for an emergency injunction to block the newspaper from publishing, claiming trade secrets and anticipated defamation. They had found out about Ben. The legal machinery was grinding into motion to silence the truth. I felt a surge of defiance. As I hung up with George, I looked at Liam, who had been listening intently. "The son," I said quietly. "The password." Liam's eyes met mine, and he gave a slow, determined nod. He pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "I have an idea," he said, "but it must be now, before the injunction is granted." He showed me his screen. He was logged into a community forum for students at the local high school. The Gable boy was openly boasting about his father's unhackable system. Liam's discovery on that forum felt like a gift and a trap. The Gable boy had arrogantly posted clues about his password, a mix of his favorite video game and his birth date. We had a narrow window, maybe just hours, before the injunction silenced the newspaper. I knew we couldn't hack the server ourselves. That was illegal and would destroy our case. But we could take this information to the authorities. I called George and told him to meet us at the county sheriff's office immediately. We had to convince them to obtain a warrant for that server based on this new, credible lead of financial crimes. Scamp whined at my feet, sensing my agitation as I grabbed my purse and coat. I needed the sheriff to understand the sequence of events: the harassment, the witness testimony, and now the potential for major fraud. If we failed, the article would be killed, and the Gables would consolidate their power over our town. I felt overwhelmed. My vision blurred for a moment, and I had to lean against the wall. Sarah drove us to the sheriff's office, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we arrived, George was already there, speaking urgently with the same deputy I'd met before. We presented our case: the forum post, Ben's statement about the digital records, and the pattern of intimidation. The deputy was skeptical. "A teenager's online bragging isn't exactly probable cause," he said. But then his phone buzzed. He listened for a moment, his expression changing. He hung up and looked at me. "That was the editor at the Gazette. The injunction was just denied. The story is running in the morning edition." The reporter had fought and won her first battle. The deputy let out a long breath. "All right," he said. "With the published article as corroboration, I think we can take this to a judge for a warrant first thing in the morning." It was the commitment we needed. We left the sheriff's office feeling a fragile sense of victory. The cool night air was a relief. As we pulled into my driveway, however, the feeling shattered. Every single one of my new motion sensor lights was on, flooding the yard with a harsh, white light. And there, nailed to my front door, was the shredded remains of a newspaper. It was tomorrow's front page, torn to pieces. They had gotten an early copy. Tacked to the door beneath the shredded paper was a single typewritten note. "You shouldn't have done that." My blood ran cold. I looked at Sarah and Liam, their faces etched with fear in the glaring light. The battle was public now, and the war had just begun. The shredded newspaper on my door felt like a declaration of war. I had to call the sheriff immediately and document this before the Gables could spin it as another delusion. My hands shook as I dialed, with Sarah and Liam standing guard beside me. I described the note and the destroyed paper, emphasizing the timing, just before the official publication. Deputy Miller arrived within minutes, his face grim as he took photos and bagged the evidence. "This is intimidation, plain and simple," he said, promising to add it to the file for the warrant. The cold morning air bit through my sweater. and I pulled Scamp closer, his small body a warm comfort against my leg. I needed to ensure the article's publication would force action, not just more threats. The emotional drain was immense. I hadn't slept properly in weeks, and my old bones ached with every movement. Later that morning, George called with an update. The warrant for the server was approved, and law enforcement was executing it at the Gable residence now. He warned me to stay home and away from the windows. I busied myself making tea, the familiar routine calming my nerves. Then, my phone buzzed with a notification from a community news app. The article was live, and comments were flooding in. Most were supportive, sharing their own stories of the Gables' bullying. Things intensified when Mrs. Gable called, her voice shrill with fury. "You've ruined us, you crazy old bat! We'll see you in court!" She hung up before I could respond. The pressure was mounting, and I felt a headache coming on. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Carol, holding a freshly baked pie. "I saw the article," she said, her eyes shining. "Half the neighborhood is talking about it. You're a hero, Evelyn." Her words warmed me, but I couldn't shake the fear. As we sat down, Liam rushed in from the living room, his laptop open. "Grandma, look at this." He showed me a live stream from a local news van parked outside the Gables' house. Police were bringing out boxes of documents, and Mr. Gable was being read his rights. The sight was surreal. A powerful man brought low by his own greed. Just then, my landline rang. I answered, and a familiar, weary voice spoke. It was Henry, calling from a blocked number. "Evelyn, it's over. Robert kept backups of everything on that server, including emails about your dog. The police have it all." He apologized for not coming forward sooner and wished me well before the line went dead. I sank into my chair, relief washing over me. But as I looked at my family's hopeful faces, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. "The law won't protect you forever. We have friends in high places." The threat was vague, but it chilled me to the bone. The battle might be won, but the war wasn't over. That text message left me uneasy for the rest of the day. I had to finalize my legal protections with George before any more surprises. We met in his office that afternoon to review my will and establish a power of attorney, ensuring Sarah and Liam would have control if anything happened to me. Signing the papers felt like putting my affairs in order, a sobering task for a woman who should be enjoying her golden years. The office was quiet, the only sound the scratching of pens and the hum of the computer. I wanted to secure my family's future and stop the Gables from finding legal loopholes. It was emotionally draining. Talking about my own death made me feel exposed and aged. George assured me everything was airtight, but the process was draining. Then, Sarah received a call from the school district. The anonymous complaint about our home environment had been formally dismissed, and Liam's scholarship was reinstated after the Gables' influence waned. It was a small victory, but it lifted a weight from my shoulders. The pressure returned when George's assistant interrupted us. "The Gables' lawyer is filing for a motion to dismiss the warrant, claiming evidence tampering." George sighed, explaining they were desperate and trying every trick. We decided to counter with the recorded threats and the shredded newspaper as proof of their harassment. As we discussed strategies, my phone vibrated with an email from the reporter. Her follow-up story was gaining traction, and she'd received tips about other victims coming forward. This public support was our best shield. Later, at home, I was watering my plants when Scamp started barking at the back door. I looked out and saw a woman I didn't recognize standing at the edge of my property. She held up a small camera, taking photos of my house before quickly walking away. I called the sheriff to report it, but they said without a direct threat, there was little they could do. The violation of privacy was unsettling. That evening, Liam helped me install additional security cameras covering the backyard and sides of the house. As I was testing the new camera feeds, I noticed a familiar car driving slowly past my house. It was Mrs. Gable's sedan. She didn't stop, but the message was clear. They were still watching. Just before bed, I checked my email one last time. There was a message from the court. The defamation case against me was being reviewed for possible dismissal due to lack of evidence. It was another step forward, but attached to the email was a scanned letter from the Gables' lawyer accusing me of witness intimidation regarding Henry. The audacity left me speechless. The accusation of witness intimidation was a blatant attempt to flip the script. I had to meet with George first thing to craft a response and protect Henry's credibility. Dawn was just breaking as I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and reviewing the letter. George arrived, looking tired but determined. He explained that we needed to demonstrate that Henry came forward voluntarily, spurred by conscience, not coercion. We drafted a statement outlining the timeline and Henry's own motivations, referencing the threats he'd received from the Gables. The soft morning light through the window felt deceptive, masking the turmoil inside. I needed to clear my name of this new charge and maintain the momentum from the server evidence. The stress was taking a physical toll. My doctor had increased my blood pressure medication, and I felt a constant, low-level fatigue. Later, Sarah came over with groceries, her presence a comforting routine. She helped me sort through mail, most of which was supportive cards from neighbours inspired by the newspaper stories. But amid the kindness, there was an official-looking envelope from the City Council. It was a notice of a public hearing to review the Gables business licenses, prompted by the allegations of corruption. My testimony was requested. The pressure intensified when Carol stopped by, her face pale. "Evelyn, I got a subpoena to testify at the hearing. I'm so nervous," I reassured her, promising we'd face it together. Then my phone rang. It was Deputy Miller. "Mrs. Evelyn, we've finished the initial review of the server data. It's worse than we thought. There are records of bribes to building inspectors and even attempts to influence senior care placements. We're expanding the investigation." The scope of their corruption was staggering, and it hit close to home. Feeling a mix of triumph and dread, I decided to prepare for the hearing with George. As we practiced my statement, Liam burst in, holding his phone. "Grandma, look at this." He showed me a social media post from the Gables' son, bragging about how his family would crush their enemies. It was a poor choice of words, given the ongoing investigation. George immediately saved it as evidence of ongoing harassment. Just as we were finishing, the doorbell rang. It was a process server with another lawsuit. This time, the Gables were suing me for alienation of affection from the community, a ridiculous claim that George said would be laughed out of court. I took the papers, my hand steady for once. The absurdity of it all was almost funny. But as the server left, I noticed a car parked down the street with its engine running. It was the same dark sedan from before. This time, it didn't drive away. It just sat there, watching. The car sitting there felt like a silent siege. I had to report it to the sheriff again and ensure my family was safe. I called Deputy Miller, who promised to send a patrol car to circle the block. Inside, I checked all the locks and drew the curtains, the familiar walls of my home feeling like both a fortress and a prison. Sarah insisted on staying the night, and Liam set up a cot in the living room to monitor the security feeds. The hum of the electronics was a constant reminder of how much had changed since Buddy was here, his cheerful bark now a ghost in the halls. I needed to get through the public hearing without showing fear, to use it as a platform for the truth. It cost me my peace of mind. Every sound in the house startled me, and I depended on sleeping pills to get any rest. The next morning, George picked me up for the hearing. The city council chamber was crowded, with reporters and residents packed into the seats. I saw the Gables across the room, their faces stony. When it was my turn to speak, I kept my voice calm and clear, describing the harassment and the evidence from the server. I saw nods of agreement from the audience, and it gave me strength. The pressure peaked when Mr. Gable's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to paint me as a vengeful old woman. But I stuck to the facts, and when he mentioned Henry, George objected, pointing out the intimidation letter. The council members seemed unimpressed with the Gables' tactics. During a break, Carol testified, her voice trembling but firm as she described the threats she'd received. Her courage inspired others to speak up, including the vet assistant and the former employee Ben, who appeared via video link. As the hearing wrapped up, the council chairman announced they were suspending the Gables' licenses pending a full investigation. It was a major victory. Outside, reporters swarmed, but George guided me away. Back in the car, I felt a profound exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "The car is gone. All quiet here." I allowed myself a small smile. But as we drove home, George's phone rang. It was the district attorney's office. They were considering criminal charges against the Gables for witness tampering and fraud, but they needed more time to build the case. When I got home, the house felt lighter. Sarah had cooked dinner, and we ate together, laughing for the first time in weeks. But as I was clearing the table, I noticed the morning's mail still unopened. There was a letter from a senior advocacy group offering legal support and counselling. It was a kind gesture, but tucked inside was a handwritten note. "Not everyone is your friend. Some just want a piece of the story." It was unsigned, but the message was clear. The fight had made me visible, and not all attention was welcome. The anonymous note from the advocacy group left me wary. I had to be cautious about who I trusted, even among well-meaning organizations. I decided to focus on rebuilding my daily life, starting with a trip to the grocery store with Sarah. Walking the aisles, picking out fruits and bread, felt normal and healing. I bought a new dog toy for Scamp, and he wagged his tail eagerly when we returned home. The simple routine was a balm, but I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see a familiar face in the crowd. I wanted to restore a sense of normalcy and safety for my family, especially for Liam, who had missed so much school. The emotional recovery was slow. I still started at loud noises, and the emptiness where Buddy used to sleep haunted me. Later, George visited with updates. The criminal case against the Gables was progressing, but it could take months. In the meantime, their assets were frozen, and they'd moved out of their house to avoid the media. It felt like a retreat, but I knew they weren't defeated yet. The pressure eased slightly when the neighborhood association sent a formal apology for not believing me earlier and invited me to speak at their next meeting about community safety. It was a gesture of reconciliation, and I agreed, hoping to foster unity. As I prepared my notes, Liam helped me sort through old photos of Buddy. We framed one of him sitting in the garden, a happy memory that made me smile through the tears. Then, something unexpected happened. My doorbell rang, and it was a woman from the local animal shelter. "We heard about what happened to your dog," she said. "We'd like to offer you a trained companion dog, no cost, as a tribute." I was touched, but I explained about Scamp and declined gently. She understood and left a brochure, but as she drove away, I noticed a man sitting in a car across the street, watching my house. He wasn't familiar, and he didn't leave when I made eye contact. I called the sheriff, who sent a deputy to check. The man claimed to be a journalist, but he had no press credentials. The deputy warned him to move along. That evening, as I was locking up, I found a small, wrapped package on my porch. It was a book about grieving pet loss, with a note inside. From a friend who understands. It was kindly meant, but after everything, I couldn't help but be suspicious. I showed it to Liam, who suggested we have it checked for fingerprints, though I doubted it was necessary. Just as we were discussing it, my phone rang. It was the district attorney himself. "Mrs. Evelyn, we've uncovered something in the server logs you need to know about. The Gables were tracking your movements through your phone. We're adding stalking charges to the case." The revelation shocked me. I'd never felt so violated. I thanked him and hung up, my hands trembling. As I looked out the window, the street was empty, but I knew the digital eyes had been there all along. The battle for privacy was just beginning. The district attorney's words about my phone being tracked made my skin crawl. I had to get a new phone and number by the end of the day, before the Gables could use any more of my data against me. I asked Liam to drive me to the phone store, and we went straight there, my old device feeling like a traitor in my purse. The store was bright and noisy, full of young people, and I felt out of place. But I focused on the task, choosing a simple model and having everything transferred. The clerk was patient, but I could see the pity in his eyes when I explained why I needed it changed. I'm just a grandmother who wants to feel safe in her own home, not someone who needs to worry about digital spies. I needed to cut off their access and protect my family's privacy. My peace of mind was gone. Every notification now made me jump, and I hated how technology had become a weapon. Later, George called with an update. The stalking charges were solid, but the Gables were claiming the phone tracking was for safety concerns due to my mental state. Their audacity was breathtaking. We decided to counter by having my doctor provide a statement about my sound mind, but it meant another invasion of my privacy. Sarah came over after work, bringing dinner, and we ate in silence, the weight of it all hanging between us. Then, something shifted. Carol stopped by with fresh-baked cookies, and she mentioned that the Gables had put their house on the market. "They're running, Evelyn," she said, her voice hopeful, but I wasn't so sure. As we talked, my new phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "New phone, same problems. You can't hide." My blood ran cold. They still had ways to reach me. Liam quickly helped me block the number and adjust my privacy settings, but the damage was done. That evening, as I was settling scamp for the night, the doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a bouquet of flowers, lilies, my favorite. The card read, "A peace offering from the Gables." I didn't trust it for a second. Sarah insisted we check them for anything suspicious, but they seemed clean. Still, I put them in the trash. Just as I was closing the door, I noticed a car slowing down outside. It was the same dark sedan from before, but this time it didn't stop. It just drove away, leaving me with a sinking feeling. Then my email pinged. It was from the district attorney. They'd found evidence on the server that the Gables had also been monitoring my bank transactions. The violation went deeper than I thought. The news about my bank transactions being monitored made me feel stripped bare. I had to meet with George and the bank manager first thing in the morning to secure my accounts completely. I didn't sleep well. Nightmares of numbers and eyes watching me. At the bank, Mr. Higgins was apologetic and helped me set up new accounts with enhanced security. He confirmed there had been unauthorized accesses linked to the Gables' law firm. Signing the papers, my hand shook. but I felt a grim satisfaction knowing we were closing their avenues one by one. The bank was quiet, the air smelling of paper and polish, a stark contrast to the chaos in my life. I wanted to ensure my finances were locked down and use this as evidence in the growing case against the Gables. The emotional impact was severe. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, constantly checking over my shoulder. Later, Sarah took me to my doctor's appointment for that mental state evaluation. Dr. Bennett, who's known me for years, was thorough and kind. He wrote a strong statement affirming my clarity and stability, which George would submit to the court. It was humiliating to have to prove my sanity, but necessary. As we left the clinic, I saw a woman taking photos of us from across the street, probably another reporter, but it set my nerves on edge. The pressure mounted when George called. The Gables had filed a motion to dismiss the stalking charges, arguing the phone tracking was consensual through an app I'd supposedly downloaded. It was a lie, of course, but it meant more legal battles. Liam, ever the tech whiz, spent the afternoon digging through my old phone backups and found no such app. He compiled a report showing the installation was forced remotely. His diligence gave me hope. That evening, we had a family dinner, Sarah, Liam, and me. For a moment, it felt normal, like the old days before all this started. But as we were cleaning up, the doorbell rang again. It was a process server with another lawsuit. This time, the Gables were suing me for defamation over the newspaper articles, claiming financial ruin. The papers felt heavy in my hands, a never-ending cycle. Just as I was about to shut the door, I noticed a small, discreet camera attached to my porch light. It hadn't been there before. Liam saw it too, and immediately took it down. It was a wireless model, still active. We called the sheriff, who took it as evidence. But the question remained: who put it there, and how long had it been watching? Finding that camera on my porch felt like the final straw. I had to have a security sweep of my entire property done today before any more devices were planted. I called a reputable company George recommended, and they arrived within hours. While they worked, I sat with Scamp in the living room, stroking his fur for comfort. The technicians found 2 more cameras, one in the backyard and one pointed at the driveway. They were all recently installed, likely in the past day or two. The invasion was systematic, and it made me feel violated in my own home. I'm too old for this kind of fight, but I have no choice. I needed to document this for the court and ensure my home was a safe space again. I lost my sense of security. I kept imagining eyes on me even indoors. George integrated this new evidence into the stalking case, strengthening our position. Later, the district attorney called personally. He said the bank records and cameras were enough to seek an arrest warrant for Mr. Gable, but it would take a day or two to process. The wheels of justice were turning, but slowly. Sarah stayed over again, and we played cards to distract ourselves, the familiar game of rummy bringing a sliver of normalcy. Then, an unexpected turn. Carol came over with her sister, who worked at the local newspaper. She had heard from sources that the Gables were preparing to leave the state, possibly to avoid prosecution. It was a rumor, but it felt credible. We decided to alert the district attorney, who put a watch on their movements. As evening fell, I received a certified letter from the Gables' lawyer. It was a settlement offer. They would drop all lawsuits and pay me a substantial sum if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and ceased all cooperation with the authorities. The amount was tempting, enough to ensure my grandchildren's education, but it felt like blood money. I discussed it with Sarah and George over the phone. George advised against it, saying it would let them off the hook. Sarah agreed, her voice firm. "We've come too far, Mum." I tore up the letter, my hands steady for once. But as I did, my new phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last chance. Accept the offer or face the consequences. I didn't respond. Instead, I checked my security app and saw a figure lurking near the edge of my property. It was too dark to make out, but they were gone before I could alert anyone. The threat was still real, but I felt a strange calm. I had made my choice. The figure on my security app decided it for me. I had to give my official statement to the district attorney today, reinforcing the case before the Gables could flee. George picked me up, and we drove to the courthouse in silence. The building was imposing, but I walked in with my head high, remembering Buddy's loyalty. In the DA's office, I recounted everything, from Buddy's death to the phone tracking and the cameras. The assistant district attorney took notes, her expression serious but respectful. She confirmed that arrest warrants for both Mr. and Mrs. Gable were being issued based on the evidence. It felt like a culmination, but I knew it wasn't over until they were in custody. I needed to see this through to the end, for Buddy and for my family. The emotional exhaustion was intense. I felt drained, as if I'd aged years in months. After the meeting, George took me for lunch at a quiet cafe. Over soup, he told me that the Gables' assets were frozen, and their house sale had fallen through due to the legal troubles. It was a small justice. When I returned home, Sarah and Liam were waiting, and we watched the news together. A segment came on about the case, highlighting the community's support and the Gables' fall from grace. It was surreal to see my story told so publicly. Then, a breakthrough. The district attorney called. The warrants were executed, and the Gables were arrested at their home this afternoon. They were charged with stalking, fraud, witness tampering, and more. I felt a wave of relief so strong I had to sit down. Sarah hugged me, tears in her eyes. Liam whooped with joy. But the pressure wasn't entirely gone. The legal process would drag on, and I'd likely have to testify at trial. Still, it was a victory. As we celebrated with tea, Carol stopped by with a congratulations cake, and the three of us shared it, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed a missed call from an unknown number. I didn't call back. Instead, I checked my security feeds. All clear. Scamp curled up at the foot of my bed, his soft snores a comforting sound. I lay down, thinking of Buddy and how he'd started this all. Just as I drifted off, my phone buzzed with a news alert. The Gables had been denied bail due to being flight risks. They were where they belonged, for now. I smiled in the dark, feeling a weight lift. But then I remembered their son, the teenager who'd killed Buddy. He was still out there, and I wondered what would become of him. The thought lingered as I fell asleep. The morning after the arrests felt different, lighter, like a fog had lifted. I decided to take Scamp for a walk in the park, something I hadn't done since Buddy died. The sun was warm on my face, and the birds were singing. Scamp tugged at the leash, eager to explore, and I let him lead me along the familiar paths. We stopped by the bench where Buddy and I used to sit, and I felt a pang of sadness, but it was softer now, edged with peace. I scattered some wildflower seeds there in his memory, a small gesture for the joy he brought me. The park was quiet, with a few other seniors walking or reading, and I nodded to them, feeling a sense of community again. I didn't have any big plans today, just to breathe and be present. The battle had left its mark. My health had suffered, and I'd lost trust in some people. But I'd gained strength I didn't know I had. Back home, Sarah came over with my grandchildren, and we spent the afternoon in the garden. The kids played with Scamp. their laughter filling the air, while Sarah and I weeded the flower beds. It was simple, mundane work, but it felt healing. George called to say the civil lawsuits were being dropped, and the Gables were facing a long legal process that would likely end in prison time. I thanked him, but my focus was on my family now. Later, Liam helped me sort through Buddy's old things. We donated his bowls and blankets to the animal shelter, keeping only his favorite toy as a keepsake. It was hard, but it felt right. As we worked, Carol dropped by with a photo album she'd put together, pictures of the neighborhood over the years, including shots of Buddy and me. It was a kind gift, and we sat at the kitchen table, flipping through it, sharing stories. The room felt warm and full of love, not fear. That evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. The street was calm, no strange cars or shadows. Scamp lay at my feet, content. I thought about how this all started with a terrible loss, but it ended with me reclaiming my life and protecting my family. I'm not the same woman I was. I'm wiser, more cautious, but also more grateful for the good people around me. The legal matters will continue, but I'm no longer fighting alone. As the stars came out, I felt a deep, quiet resolution. Buddy would always be in my heart, but it was time to move forward, one step at a time with my family by my side.